school.
My name is Jay.
Wording from the Philippines.
My name is Cisco. It's about the images of your name in the ribbon, which is and what are the things that children needs to be independent as a teen. It's a nice refreshment.
I'm excited to go. Hopefully there would be another one. Not only motivates me to attend more trainings here. So that at the days of the final seminar, I very much especially the questions are discussed about adventure experience and also the fact that Miss Bell taught us about regional learning, where she emphasized about planning, meeting, and a clear view of students. She emphasized also that regional learning is it makes us more efficient in teaching the young ones.
Welcome, everyone. Please type your full name in the chat box so we can check your attendance. Thank you. I will remind again. Welcome, everyone. Please type your full name in the chat box so we can check your attendance. Thank you.
For my group, I would like to present about our teachings today.
Duh.
Welcome to Lee Education Business Solutions. I would like to invite you to our fourth international workshop.
You take control even if you know that you don't own me. I'll let you play.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on Facebook and YouTube.
My mommy likes to sing along with me, but she won't sing this song if she reads all the lyrics. She'll pity the men I know. So you're a tough guy, like you really rough guy. Just can't get enough guy, just always so puff guy. I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend mad type, might seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy.
Welcome everyone. Please type your full name in the chat box so we can check your attendance. Thank you. And I'll remind again. Welcome everyone. Please type your full name in the chat box so we can check your attendance. Hello everyone, my name is Jason. I'm a social media coordinator for LeEBS. The webinar will start in 5 minutes. Please make sure to check your camera is turned on all the time. Make sure the microphone is muted in class discussion. Only unmute if the instructor is asking a question. I will be discussing later about your certificate at the end of the webinar. Thank you. Two minutes from now, we will start our webinar. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to request you all to please turn on your camera right now. You'll first, I would like to ask, can you all hear me? All right. So let's try to check if all your microphones are question. Can you please start the process? Yes. Right. Once again, are you able to see me? Not visible in your end. Not yet visible. Right. I'm checking again. There's like problem with the camera. Okay. Anyways, I'll try to fix out my camera later once I have fixed the difficulties. Right. So, can you all see my slide? Cannot see the slide. Okay. Can you see an icon that is stating about process of language learning? Okay. How about this time? Can you all see my slide? Not yet. Okay. Fine. Patience is Okay, how about this time? Is my slide visible? Okay, great. Right. So once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar entitled The Process of Language Learning. So today is March 6th, 2021, and we are live here in Bangkok, Thailand. So on behalf of the Education Business Solution, I would like to thank you all for coming, and I hope that you are having a good weekend so far. So let me acknowledge the presence of the following people who are here already. I'm going to read through the chat box. Okay. So first we have Mr. Tony Michai. Can you please say something, Mr. Tony? Yeah. Can you say something and greet our participants?
Oh wow, what an honor. Thank you, Teacher Louie. Very nice. Nice to meet you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mary Rose Blanco as well. Mary Rose, are you here? I would like to acknowledge the presence of Jenny, Shini, May, and Lapis.
Hello, good evening. I'm Chini from the Philippines.
Okay, thank you, Shini. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Camelia Jane Solero. She's here. Okay. I'd like to acknowledge the presence
Hello, good evening,
of,
everyone.
okay, good evening, Mary Grace Tagailo.
Ako na. Hello, good evening everyone.
Good evening. Crisanta Dukai.
Ikaw na, Day.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. Annali- Annalisa Kaitap.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you.
Okay, great. Winilyn Quinones.
Hello.
Okay, hi. We have Emanuela May Kellen.
Hi everyone, good evening.
Okay, good evening. Meryl Rose Apple. Hello, Meryl. Gerardine Perez.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and nice to see you all.
Okay, good evening. We also have Carol Sheila May Kennan.
Hello, Sir Louis. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay. Carol Ann Wheaton.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, great. So I think Antonio Jose Legarda.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay. Did I miss someone?
Connect mo ba yung
Okay. So, all right. Please try to mute because we will have some problems with the echo.
Oh, yes, you miss me. My name is Kit from Thailand.
I'm
Hello.
sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. Can you please type your name, sir, in the chat box?
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
I will. Okay, I will.
Okay. All right. Welcome. Welcome.
Mhm.
Good evening. So we are trying to fix my camera. I think there's was like an error because a lot of employees for tonight's webinar. Okay. So I hope that you can see my slide well. This is the most, it's more important in my face. And of course, I will be glad to see you also in person. So once again, welcome to the process of language learning. This is going to be an interesting topic for all of us because this is really important for our career. Are you all educators in Thailand or planning to become an educator in Thailand? So no worries because this is always going to help you whatever career that you will choose in the future. Before that, let me introduce to you our company. Welcome to the Education Business Solution. On your right, you can see those are previous TEFL graduates and our activities as an educational training company. We have been awarded as one of the top 50 organizations in education, an international award given by Global Forum of Learning and Education from the Meridian, Dubai. So we got this award last 2019. Let me introduce to you myself. Okay. Hi, I'm instructor Louie, so you can call me Louie for short. I'm a master degree in education. My major is teaching instructions and curriculum development. I'm an experienced EFL ESL instructor like you for more than 8 years. I'm an advanced master TEFL and TESOL and also a TEYL certified and educational technology certified. And I'm also known as the founder and course director of the Education Business Solution. So on behalf of my team, I welcome you all to our webinar, and I hope that you will learn a lot of things that will be useful for your profession. To begin with, let me state to you our objective for tonight. So first, we will learn the topic titled The Process of Language Learning, but we have some subtopics. Number one, we will learn what is language acquisition, what is second language acquisition, what are the factors affecting second language acquisition. We'll also try to define what is language, explain the relationship of language acquisition, representation, approaches to second language acquisition, and lastly, using second language acquisition principles and techniques in classroom teaching. So we have a lot of topics to discuss. So I hope that you are able to uh, absorb like 80% of it. I would be so glad. But at the end of this course training, you will receive the certificate. So at the 50% to you, our certificate, once you have once we're done with our webinar. So a certificate of participation, you'll put your name there, the title of this webinar, and the topic we have aligned. So each certificate has a certificate number, so no one can copy this one. So this is the official e-certificate that we will be releasing after the webinar. For those students or attendees who requested a hard copy, please try to reach Jason later. We will be discussing about the hard copy of your certificate. To begin, let me ask you a question. What language or languages do you speak? I need 2 or 3 volunteers to answer if you're something. Let's see how courageous you are. Don't be shy. We are all teachers, I think, or majority of us here are educators. Likes to volunteer. Yes, Jenny. What language or languages do you speak?
Hello, so I can speak English and Tagalog.
Okay. Thank you, Chinny. So she can speak English and Tagalog. All right. One more?
I can speak
Yes.
English, Thai, Tagalog, and Cebuana.
Okay. Wow. That's English, Thai, Tagalog, and Savannah. That's four. Great. Thank you, Mary Grace.
Thank you, sir.
I
One
speak
more?
I speak
Yes.
Tagalog, English, and a little bit of Thai, maybe 70%.
70%.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Thank you all for your response. Number two question. How did you learn that language? I need different volunteers. Two or three volunteers. Come on, don't be shy. Should I call someone? Okay, let's start with random selection here, as I can see. Antonio Jose. How did you learn your language?
So are you referring to me?
Yes, yes.
Ah, okay. I learned Thai by observation, really, at first, and then through and basically listening to my students. Eventually, I got the gist of most of their language. I'm able to talk to them in a, well, not so near conversant, but at least I'm understandable. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you for sharing. One more. One more volunteer.
Okay, sir. For
Yes.
me, of course, I learned my English at school, so someone taught me to use
Okay.
English. And then for Cebuana, of course, for my parents, and then Tagalog, it was also taught at school. And then for Thai, I started listening to them and then mimicking their uh, tone, and then uh, finding the meaning of that. And then last one is trying to apply it, trying to speak with those people.
Okay, great. Thank you all for your answers. The reason that I'm asking you about what are language or languages you speak and how did you learn it, because tonight we will try to put ourselves in the shoe of students. How difficult for them to learn a new language, and how did they learn the language or they acquired the language when they were still young. The language impacts the daily lives of members or any race, creed, and region of the world. Would only mean that all the people around the world speaks a certain language. It might not be all totally English, but each country we have our own language. And that language helps us express our feelings, desires, and theories to the world around us. Imagine if in the world no one knows how to speak a certain language. How would you survive communicating with each other? So maybe we can survive through gestures, we can survive through drawing, okay? Or we can survive to doing some memes. I think so. That would be the best way to communicate, right? So knowing this, the importance of the language, it will unite every people in each country, okay? And once they go outside the country, that's why the importance of having another language that is spoken or a majority of the people are using it. So what is a language then? It is a system of symbols and rules that enable us to communicate. A symbolic code used in communication. The systematic, meaningful arrangement. So if you check in our definition, These are represented by symbols. Okay? And normally the symbols are what we call the letters of our alphabet. Okay? Like in Thailand, they have their own Thai alphabet. In English, we have the English alphabet. And even for the Filipinos as well, we have their own alphabet. Okay, but now they're using more about the English alphabet as well. So now let's try to differentiate the two. Language learning versus language. Who can tell me a gift about what's the difference between language learning and language acquisition? Or are you familiar with the terms? Anyone? Just one volunteer. I would highly appreciate. Okay, silence means everyone is so keen to listen. Okay, no problem. So let's move on then. Okay, my question right now is not actually about asking you the definition. When you are a language instructor, which one are you actually teaching your students? Are you teaching them to learn the language? Or, or are you teaching them to apply? Okay, so let's define them. What is language learning? Language learning is the teaching about language, its use, its speaker, its structure, with the hope that the student will learn enough to be able to speak the target language. It would only mean that if you're an English teacher, you, as a teacher, is one factor, and the way you make your lessons okay, and how you deliver in class are the three things that affects how your students will learn the language. Language learning is the conscious learning of the target language and usually done in formal situations like in a proper classroom. So when you are a language teacher, you are telling them what is their language and inculcating to them what are the information about the language technicalities. So it would only mean that it is a conscious way of learning and developing. It also follows the form from the official language model, like grammatical rules of the language. So when we teach our students, we don't just teach them according to what we think, what's our instinct, what's our hunches. We teach it with a proper background. Okay? For example, if you know IPA system, so that's a system used when you're teaching phonics, okay, or in English language teaching. The learning starts from simple to complex order. So, as a language teacher, you need to start with the basic letter, combining those letters, and combining those phonemes, okay, to become a word and teach them the entire word. And that's what we are now teaching vocabulary. So the language learning trend. So language learning as seen today is not communicative. This is the problem. It is the result of direct instruction in the roots of language. And it certainly is not an age appropriate activity for young learners, as it is not for adults. The teachers, I would like you to be enlightened. When we teach language, we need to teach in a communicative. We don't teach them the technicalities and structure, especially if our learners are second language uh, learners of that language. Okay, it would only mean that this is not their mother tongue, so we're teaching them the structure or the grammatical part of it. It will make their life easier. If our ultimate goal here is to give them a good impact and understanding and practicing right away the language, we need to know how to teach them in a communicative way. In language learning, students have conscious knowledge of the new language and can talk about that knowledge. Important. As teachers, it is our duty to make sure that our students acquire rather than learn the language. That's according to Loue hopefully. So acquire and not learn the language. Okay. Why? Why do you think so? That we must teach them to acquire it rather than just learn it. To answer that, let's define what is language acquisition then. Language acquisition, in its current sense, tries to expose the student to the target language in meaningful ways so that he or she acquires the language structure through actual use. Take note of the word actual use. Okay. The common problem that I have observed of many teachers, they forget that aside from the grammar part of teaching, we need to have some activities that will help them to actualize what they have learned. The lack of application of the newly learned language is actually a huge factor for them to remember or comprehend that language that you are teaching. In the process by which humans acquire the capacity to perceive and comprehend the language, or in other words, gain the ability to be aware of language and understand it, as well as to produce and use words and sentences to communicate. Now, I'll come back to you again. When you were just like acquiring your native language, how did you do it based on your experience? Or can you still remember? How did you acquire your native language? Okay, let's say we have from Thailand here. Uh, I am not yet sure about the name, but I have here Mr. Great Indeed. That's the name of his profile icon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mr. Great Indeed, can you
Yes.
please share to us how did you acquire Thai language or learn the Thai language?
Okay. How I acquired the Thai language? Actually, I learned how to speak, how to communicate with my parents. It's rather natural way because they also speak Thai, even though my parents are Chinese. But in my family, we all speak Thai, and that's the way I acquire language. It's in a natural ways. Like we do not. Oh, after that, I went to school and study reading, writing in school.
Okay.
But firstly, I learned the language from my parents though, in my family.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing, sir.
You're welcome.
So I have a question then to Camilla.
Hmm.
Camilla, even though Mr. Great Indeed is born in Thailand, but his parents are speaking Chinese and not Thai language, do you think he will acquire Thai language?
Mm.
Do you think so?
I think so, yes, because of the environment or the setting that where he is. Yes, I think so. Maybe.
Okay, great. No problem. Don't worry. There's no wrong answer. Thank you, Camilla. Okay. How about to Maria Carolina? Let's say Mr. Great Indeed parents are Thai people and they're speaking the Thai language. However, her parents or his parents are not teaching him Thai language, only English language. Do you think he will acquire Thai language?
I think he will not be able to acquire that language because he will not, although his parents are teaching him, he will not be able to use it if you don't try to communicate with them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maria. All right. So I would like you all to remember all their answers, okay? Because on the next slide, I'm going to explain. So which one are you using when you're teaching your students like the English language? Is it language learning or language acquisition? So one, I'd like you to ask yourself right now, okay? Which one? So now let's talk about the second language acquisition to answers all my questions about it. Let's try that. Definition about the second language acquisition. Second language acquisition, or in short, let's just say SLE, take note of the acronym. It's sometimes called second language learning as well, and otherwise referred to as L2. Okay, take note of the term L2 is what we call second language. And if it's a first language, you say L1. Okay, first language is L1, second language is L2. So L2 acquisition is the process by which the people learn a second language. SLA is also the scientific discipline devoted to studying this process. On the field of second language acquisition is a subdiscipline, what we call applied linguistics, but also receives a research attention from a variety of other disciplines such as psychology and education. So a central theme in SLA research, we have the first term. We call it interlanguage. This is the idea that the language that the learner uses is not simply the result of differences between the languages that they already know and the languages that they are learning, but a complete language system in its own rights, with its own systematic rules. This interlanguage gradually develops as learners are exposed to the targeted language. The order in which learners acquire features of their new language stays remarkably constant, even for learners with different native languages and regardless of whether they have had language instruction. And that's the next term would be what we call language transfer. The language transfer, it is a language that learners already know and can have significant influence on the process of learning. So if we understand our students, they are SLA learners. First, before they actually try to learn the second language, we are assuming as a language teacher that these students have have a good foundation about their L1. What's L1 again? First language. Okay. I'll use the term. Okay. So if they are not capable of understanding their L1, it will actually affect their understanding about L2. That will lead them to confusion. Because the factor there is the interlanguage. There is no systematic division that what they're talking right now is actually an L1 and what they are listening from a foreign language teacher is actually an L2. Okay. There is no distinction that is created to our young learners. So we need to understand that they are not the same with adults, that they are capable of putting this in a column of L1 language and putting this one in a column of an L2 language. Our students who are young learners needs a lot of guidance from the teacher. So sometimes when a teacher, a foreign teacher speaks Thai mixed with English in front of the students is actually not helping them to learn English. So we need to understand as foreign language teachers, if we are there to speak English in front of them, do not try to interpret or mix the two languages, or it will affect them, the process of interlanguage. After that, if our students was able or capable of developing or constituting a systematic rules about the two languages that they are learning and practicing, they are now ready for the language transfer. Okay, so this is now a high influence about the process, okay, of how they will actually master the L2 without forgetting the L1. Do you have any question? Did I explain it? Or are you confused? Okay, silence means you understand, I'm assuming. Okay, so understanding, let's now try to understand the learner's thing. So basically, when we are a language teacher, we have two learners, okay? But a learner's sense of connection to their in-group, as well as to the community of the target language, emphasize the influence of the social linguistic setting, as well as the social factors within the second position classes. Society, okay, is a huge factor of how they will develop their second language. In other words, if we compare Thailand, okay, by the way, is Thailand an EFL or an ESL?
That's EFL.
Correct. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thailand is EFL, okay, or English as a foreign language.
Right.
This is a common mistake of a lot of foreign teachers here, that they are trying to use ESL program to EFL students. It would only mean that ESL are actually a harder type of English lesson. That's why no matter how you simplify the topic, but the topic is intended for ESL, our EFL students will always have a problem of learning and understanding. Okay. So as a foreign language teacher, we need to understand that we must know the EFL principles rather than the ESL principles. Okay? So ESL again is English as a
That's the
secondary
fun.
language.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. An example country that is ESL is, of course, since we have a lot of Filipinos here, it's the Philippines. Okay, they're ESL country. So going back to our definition, in social linguistic setting, since Philippines speak English as part of their daily lives or in the community, this is a huge factor why a lot of people who are educated or not were not fully educated are capable of speaking English because English is used as a communication. Take note about the principle I mentioned a while ago, communicative learning. Social identity theory argues that an important factor for second language acquisition is the learner's perceived identity in relation to the community of the language being learned, as well as how the community of the target language perceives the learner. Take note of the term, the community of the target language perceives the learner. Okay. Now, I will ask this question. If you are the teacher of foreign language learning, how do you perceive your student?
Mm.
I will ask someone or I have some volunteers. I just want to know what's your perception about your students. I don't need a paragraph, just a simple sentence answer. Don't worry, no pressure. Would like to share something. Okay, should I call some? We have Mr. Miss, someone who just recently joined. Rodney, is Mr. Rodney here? Hello, Mr. Rodney. Uh, you are muted. Sorry. You try to unmute first. Okay, just click the icon, microphone icon, and you will be unmuted. You see that one? One with the okay. Are you able to see it, Mr. Rodney? Okay. So while trying to do some fixing his microphone, let's ask someone here. Who else do we have? Let's see you all. Right. How about Sheila? Hey, Sheila, I don't want to pressure you, but let's see what's your opinion about this. Problem? Okay, any volunteer? Okay, Annalisa? Teacher Annalisa? Okay, no worries. Anderson, you might be shy of
Mm.
expressing because there's a lot of people around. Okay, no worries. Okay, so let's do it because we're catching up with our time, right? So the perception of the foreign language teacher is actually important because if you perceive your students just as students, it's not actually helping. You're not actually helping them to like you as their teacher and to love the language that you are teaching. It's one factor of letting the students learn more the language is the teacher itself. Remember, we are a huge factor of why our students are loving what we're teaching them. So if they cannot see that to us, because our perception is just they are just students anyway, I'll just teach what I am paid by the school. Don't really care that much. Then that would also mean that these students would not also care about learning. They're just going there because to have the attendance. Okay. Whether or not a learner feels a sense of connection to the community or culture or the target language, it helps us determine their social distance from the target culture. Now, let's try to understand. Continuation, a smaller social distance is likely to encourage the learners to acquire the second language, as their investment in the learning process. Conversely, a greater social distance discourages attempts to acquire the target language. However, negative views not only come from the learner, but the community of the target language might feel greater social distance to the learner, limiting the learner's ability to learn the language. Now let's try to relate here in Thailand since majority of us are here. When your student has recently learned English from you and they will go to 7-Eleven and try to practice what they have learned, do you think the person, the customer service representative at 7-Eleven will speak back to them in English once they applied what they have learned? Yes.
Mm.
Most likely, the situation is they will not. They will still reply using their L1. But the thing there, if you notice, if they did not understand you when you speak English, how can they respond, right? So it would only give you an idea, okay, that they actually understand. However, they are not confident enough to express their current English language, their capacity. Okay? So with that, if our student was able to learn a language, but there's a social distancing, not because of COVID, okay, but because of the language barrier, will limit them to actually practice what they have learned. In other words, the student will be less motivated to practice what they have learned. Okay, so that's the challenge for us language teachers. How can we help our foreign language learners in this case that they don't have a certain venue to actually practice right away what they have learned from us? Okay, in the classroom. So when we design a certain activity, we need to make sure that we will give them a lot of time to practice all the language that we have taught them and not for us to evaluate if they have learned what we have taught them. Okay? Take note. I would advise you not to focus about evaluating if they have memorized what you have taught them, but you focus on giving them time to try to practice to one another the language. Either they have learned a lot or not, at least you can see they're trying to practice it during your session, during your class. Whether or not bilingualism is valued by the culture or community of the learner is important indicator for the motivation to learn a language. Now let's try to be more specific. Let's talk about the child learner. Who among you here are teaching elementary or primary level? Okay, great. So if you're a primary level teacher, then I would like you to focus much on this. Your child learning. By the time the child is 5 years old, she can express ideas clearly and almost perfectly from the point of view of language and grammar. Take note about the age. So when you start teaching them a new language, it is ideal that you teach them when they get 5 years old. When they are 5 years old. So when you are an adubay, okay, or kindergarten teacher, your focus there is not actually letting them speak, but your focus is just exposure of the foreign communication, of the foreign musics or um, photos. Okay. But once you're teaching 5 years old students, you are now capable of teaching them some parts of the grammar. But take note, not the technicalities of the grammar. Okay? You cannot tell your 5 years old this is a noun, this is a pronoun, that is a verb, this is an adjective. What do you think about it? Okay? So do not teach them technicalities. Okay? When we teach grammar to them, how do you teach grammar to 5 years old, by the way? Okay? To some teachers, when someone says teach them grammar, they would say, oh, how can I teach them grammar? I think it's not. It's not. Okay, yes, Ms. George. How do you teach grammar to 5 years old? Yes, Ms. G? Ms. G?
Yes, teaching grammar is like a very broad, it's very broad for the young children. Just like all you have to do is to have meaningful and enjoyable interaction, especially in for the target language. That's why for 5 years old we must understand um, their ability and their attitude, so we can input proper motivation for them to learn the language properly, or I mean the language acquisition, because small kids they learn the language by acquisition. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Rodney, you please try to unmute first. Rodney, click the icon. It's an icon there. It's like a microphone. It's normal. Usually it's the bottom of your account. Can you see it? You are still muted. Okay. If you're using your phone, try to click the screen and it will pop out microphone icon and click this one so that you will be unmuted. So already, I'll get back to you once you're done. Just let me know, okay? So yes, thank you for sharing, Jordan. You're absolutely correct. When we teach child, we don't teach them structures. We teach them the actual application of the grammar and letting them repeat after us. Okay, and sometimes we are using the ALM method. Okay, in TEFL, we have the audiolingual method. ALM, audiolingual method. It means that they repeat after you. Okay, so the factor there, if your pronunciation is wrong, then the students will also pronounce it wrong. The teacher be responsible of how you let them repeat after you. You need to make sure that you're actually pronouncing it right. I'm not saying you to master a certain accent, right? I'm just wanting you to focus on your pronunciation. Okay? When we're teaching grammar, it's not actually important to teach a certain accent, but our focus is to expose them for the proper pronunciation. Okay. Now let's try to see what are the different factors. First, the child will learn after their first teacher in the home are the parents. Expose the child to their language in a meaningful communication. As a result, the first language is acquired without the need of systematic studies of any kind. So this is in the situation of Mr. Great Indeed. A while ago, he told us that his parents were speaking Thai, so that's why he's able to talk Thai because that's a language taught by his parents. Not maybe in a classroom setting, but the actual application in home and when they're whenever they are going out as a family. They're using Thai. But when the child goes to the school, okay, the teacher is the one helping them develop their L1, and if they have a foreign language L2, then the foreign language teacher will develop the L2. The teacher will focus more on the communicative aspect of the language rather than on just rules and patterns for the children to repeat and memorize. In order to acquire the language, the learner needs a source of natural communication. The emphasis is on the text of the communication and not on the form. This is important that when we are an L2 teacher, what's L2 again? Second language, okay, teacher, we need to put emphasis about how it is properly enunciated or spoken rather than explaining to them each word. So you might ask me, so therefore, Louis, if I'm teaching a young child, do you think it's very ideal if I'll teach them vocabularies? Which a lot of teachers is starting to teach all the students vocabularies. Okay, here's my point of view. Okay, take note. This is my point of view. I'm not saying that it is wrong to teach our students vocabularies. Okay, our young learners. We're talking about young learners. Don't forget. The thing here, if you don't use this word or vocabularies in an actual communication, they are not learning how to communicate the language. They are learning like what Google will tell us if we translate Thai to English. Okay. So therefore, when we apply or combine those words to make a communication, they cannot understand. But if we talk word by word, they will understand it. Can you get the point? So in other words, when you teach them vocabulary, try to use it in an actual communication as well. Okay. Who likes to give an example? One example. Anyone? A primary level teacher here. Okay. Yes, Miss G, no problem.
I teach vocabulary using real objects,
All right. And how did you do it?
pictures, or even we go outside and explore the environment to learn more vocabularies.
Mhm. When you present the word then, what do you do after?
Just like present, just like present them, and then they will repeat it back.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Miss G. Yes, Miss Daphil, Jordan Daphil, she raised hand. Yes,
Ye-
please.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, good evening.
I'm new teacher. I am a new teacher actually.
Okay.
Uh, I try to teach my kindergarten like, for example, I'm showing them a picture of a child swimming, and rather baby rather, and I taught them that the child is swimming or the baby is swimming.
Okay. Yes, that's correct. So when you teach them the word, like, okay, let's say swimming, talk about swimming. Okay, if you're my kindergarten teacher, our students, I would say, okay, class, repeat after me, swimming. And then speak, swimming. Okay, show to them the photo, swimming. Okay, and then describe what is on the photo. For example, you have a boy there that is swimming, so you can say, the boy is swimming.
Okay.
The boy is swimming. Swimming. Okay, so in
Okay.
that way, we're helping them to do an actual communication and not just identifying a certain word, associating with the photo. Okay, so it's important for us as language teachers that we need to tell them how to use it in a communication and not just about the structure, okay, of how we translate it from their language to the English language that they're teaching. And the last factor that will affect the understanding of our young learners are their classmates or their friends, people around them. Young students who are in the process of acquiring a second language get plenty of on-the-job practice. They readily acquire the language to communicate with classmates. This is one reason that if your daughter or your son is enrolled in an international school where the classmates are from different countries, they're talking English as the point of communication. So that's why even though they started from the zero level of English language, they will become eventually intermediate and sometimes become fluent at the end of the year. Okay? Because their classmates are talking only English. Okay? And it became their friends. Okay. Let's now state that your student friends, they are all non-speakers of English. Okay, they don't speak English. They speak only the local language. Okay, and then your daughter or son might be enrolled in an international school. When they met with their friends, what language do they speak with each other? Most likely, your daughter will try to speak English because that daughter or son is learning English and they're talking English in school. So it becomes a communication, not just a subject. However, for those people, the recipients, who are not used English as form of communication, but as only as a subject, they will feel uncomfortable about the situation. So they will not try to speak English. They will speak Thai language if they are from Thailand. Okay? So it means that their friends are actually a huge factor as well on the development of our young people. Okay? So I'm not telling you that, okay, when we have a son or daughter, we will not allow them to mingle with those who are not capable of speaking English. Okay? I'm not telling you that. Okay, my message is if you want your son or daughter, your student to get advanced about the actual communication, they should be mingling with those friends or classmates who are also speaking English as a language. That's their L2. Now, after understanding our young learner, let's try to talk about the adult language learners. Okay? So, adult language learners are goal-oriented and direct their learning to fulfill particular needs. Adult learners want to advance their studies, to progress up the career ladder, to follow business opportunities, to pass a driving test, to assist their children with homework, or simply to be successful users of language. And our adult language learners, they usually require immediate value and relevance from their studies, and they often learn best when they are engaged in developing their own learning project. This is a guide for us. This statement tells us that when we are teaching adult language learners, we must be now keen about what they actually need and not just what we actually want them to learn. Okay? So, in this manner, you need to do always a proper assessment for your language learners, those who are okay? Who are teaching here high school, university students, or even working together. Right. I will ask some of this. Right. Antonia, AJ, AJ, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Sir AJ, on your experience when you were teaching adults, okay, how do you teach them? What are the things that you prefer?
Basically, what I do now with adult learners is that I make them choose. Right now, I'm teaching upper secondary students, and what I do with them is that I ask them questions on the fly with the topic at hand. Now, this is based on the presumption that their grammar teachers have already given them that what they needed, so they have certain abilities that are not available to the lower level learners, like for example in the primary or in the lower secondary. So they have a higher, assuming that's what it is, base of grammar. Now what I do now is to have them look at the topic, and then I fire questions at them at random based on how they understand the topic itself on reading it. I give them a number of minutes. I teach a 50-hour class, 50-minute class rather. So I give them at least 10 minutes to read the material. So I'm using the reading skill for this. And then their comprehension. And I ask them the question. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, thank you, AJ. I have a follow-up question, right? So you allow them to select what they want to learn. Okay? But when at the end of the training, were they also asking you, they have they progressed in what they have chosen was the right path for their learning?
In this instance, the only progress that they will have is when when they want to progress. That's why I ask them to choose. If you want to progress,
Mhm.
let's participate. Let's participate. Let's cooperate with each other. But if you don't want to progress, then I can't force you. But please don't deny your classmates the chance to progress.
Okay,
Because
right.
there's my students right now. Many of them don't care. As well,
Mhm.
I have many students who don't care about the topic or the subject of English. So I'm quite happy with this kind of with what they do. As long as they want to participate, they can join in. If not, they can sit at the back and do their thing. However, I always remind them that you are in a formal setting. You're not this is not an informal class. You are in a school where you're always evaluated. So it's up to you. So you don't blame me. For example, you don't blame the teacher if you have low progress ratings. And of
Okay,
course, I always report to the coordinators about what happens in my class.
okay, okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, AJ. So let's try to understand why maybe our adult learners are responding like that. So in adult, there are three factors that will help them to develop language. First and the main factor right now, not their parents, okay, is the teacher. The courses revolve around grammar patterns, repetitions, drillings, and rote memorization without even a human interlocutor to interact with. Courses do not offer you a single chance to engage in meaningful. Are you familiar with the term interlocutor? Okay? This is the person of what? The person that you're interacting to have a dialogue. communication. We called it informal English interlocutor. Okay? So you cannot say that this is my conversation partner. Okay, that's the simplest term. Okay, but informal English or in TEFL or TESOL, we call them are next, the friends. Okay, who are the friends of our learner? How could you be expected to communicate if you are never given the chance to speak with a real person? Correct. So if the friends of our learner are all non-speakers of English, would they have the opportunity to speak English after our lessons? Okay. So that's why we also encourage our students to speak with some foreign friends that they have, even though these foreign friends of them are not actually English speakers, but they know how to speak English. Okay? Because it is expected that many foreigners are capable of speaking English. Now, after the friends, last factor would be the co-worker, especially if they're working professional. If they can talking consistently same language at work, there will be a higher chance of development. So you can ask your learner, is your company an international? If it's an international company, if you have foreign teachers, foreign co-workers, or talking English, if you have, then grab the opportunity to talk and apply what you have learned. Okay? Because that's one way you are helping yourself to progress. But all of these factors will be affected if they don't have a certain sense of motivation, which I'm going to discuss later about the factors of SLA, right? So, in other words, as foreign language teacher, we are the number one person in charge of helping them develop or progress with the language, target language, okay, that they are the language that they want to learn. Without us guiding them properly, they are not gonna progress. They are just it's like you're teaching them how to get to know English. Okay? It's like when you get to know a person, it does not guarantee that you will become close with that person, right? Maybe they can be one of your social friends, okay? Or just a friend when you meet them. Okay? So it's English would be like that, or other language that you're teaching would be like that. Okay? So our goal here is to make our students, okay, love the language that we are teaching them, and of course make sure that we are teaching them in the right pattern. Okay? When I say right pattern, there is a certain step that you need to follow when you're actually like, teaching a language, and you cannot just skip. Continue. So since we have understand our learners, the adult and the young, let's try to differentiate them or define language acquisition, representation, language representation, and language language acquisition. This is about how is language learned. While if we talk about language representation, these are the symbols of the language represented in the memory. And if we're talking about language processing, these are now the factors that influence the processing of our language. So if we will have a concrete example, I have shown to you. The first, the language is acquired. Example, L1 of our students is acquired. And us, when we're teaching them L2, example here, you show to them the photo of this animal without knowing what is that in English. Okay, let's say the language that we are teaching is English. Without telling them what is this and just showing the photo, what would your students normally respond? They will respond, or like muted, or they will respond in their L1 in your experience? Most likely, if they don't know the L2 that we're teaching them, they will respond the L1, right? Yes, Winlin?
Yeah, they would say chang, chang, chang,
Okay,
which means
yes,
elephant.
exactly. So our students will say Chan, right? Because that's the Thai language. Okay. So for us teacher, we are not uh, Thai English teacher. Okay. So we cannot tell them that what they are talking in Thai is actually right or wrong. We cannot confirm, even though we know that it's Chang, but we are not in the position to do confirmation to our students. So how we can help them is to tell them that, okay, so this is elephant. Okay, repeat after me. Elephant, elephant. Okay, one more time. Elephant. Okay. So the students will now try to acquire that this photo, which is Chang, but teacher is teaching us another language. She or he is talking that this is an elephant. Elephant. So when we do the acquisition, it will lead to the representation now. So this is the time that you write on the board what is the spelling of the elephant while showing to them various photos to confirm that this is not the only photo of an elephant. Elephant could be like this, elephant could be like this, and elephant could be like that. Okay? Take note, if you associate with a single photo, they might think that the elephant must be only like this. So we need to give them various examples also of different photos of the elephant to confirm acquisition. Okay, so now there is a complete representation once we have written or spelled the elephant on the board or show to them the spelling of the elephant. So after that, our students now is ready to process. So the language used in the processing of this representation. Okay. But there are different factors that affects the language. Okay. So now when they process, when they're trying to digest repeatedly that okay, so this is an elephant in English, that is an elephant in English, elephant in English. Our students may or may not learn it's because of the different factors, which I'm going to talk to you on my next slide. So what is it? What are they? The factors and approaches to extent. Before I move to this topic, do you have anything you want to clarify? Okay. So just a recap, we are now on the stage of analyzing how our students will process the language after they have acquired and how we have represented as a language teacher. So welcome to the factors and approaches to SLA. Again, what is SLA? If you forget, second language acquisition. Right.
Acquisition.
All right. So just to make sure we're on the same page. All right. The first factor is cognitive factors. Okay. Why this is very important. Much modern research in SLA has taken a cognitive approach. Cognitive research is concerned with the mental processes involved in language acquisition and how they can explain the nature of learners' language knowledge. This area of research is based in the more general area of cognitive science and uses many concepts and models used in more general cognitive theories of learning. As such, cognitive theories views second language acquisition or SLA as a special case of more general learning mechanisms in the brain. Take note, there is a part of our brain that is focusing about memorization. There's a part about creativity, okay? And there's a part about artistic, okay, being artistic. So It means that if our students have some problem with the brain or the cognitive parts or capability, it actually gonna affect how they also learn what we are teaching them. Okay. So in the cognitive factors, like in the computational model, the dominant is the cognitive approach to second language acquisition, and indeed in all second language acquisition research is the computation model, and it has three stages. The first stage here, learners retain certain features of the language input in short-term memory, and this retained input is known as intake. It knows the word, the term intake. Okay. So when we teach our students, it became part of their short-term memory. Okay. In other words, when we talk about short-term memory, they might be forgotten at the end of your lesson. Okay, if you're teaching 60 minutes, after 60 minutes, it's gone by the wind. No more again. Okay, so how we will help them? Go to stage two. The learners convert some of this intake into second language knowledge, which is stored in the long-term memory. So our goal, after letting them giving them information about language, which is stored in short term, is to convert that into a long term memory. Now, in your experience, what made you remember something, okay, that is still in your long term memory? What made you remember something? Think about it. A situation. What makes you able to remember a certain situation? Okay. One factor is if you are actually having a euphoria. Okay. You know euphoria? Sorry if the term. Are you familiar with the term euphoria? Okay. Excessive happiness. Okay. It's like a feeling high. I'm so happy. Enjoying. Okay. Or are you feeling painful? You're painful about the situation. Okay. So it talks about this. When we teach our students with something memorable, something that's fun learning, that is actually helping our goal to reach it to the long-term memory part of the okay? Then after that, once we reach the long-term memory part of the grade, the learners use the second language knowledge to produce spoken output. This is the time that when you, before you end your class, you need to let them engage in an actual activity or actual application. Because once it was already uh, retained in the long-term memory, they must try to practice it so that they will appreciate what is explained to them. Okay, not practice to us. This is a common mistake that I have observed that some teachers, before they finish the class, they let the students fall in line and ask questions in front of the teacher to answer towards them. No, our goal that is an ESL way. Okay, EFL way will let them talk among each other, apply what they have learned to each other, and we are there to supervise or facilitate if they're actually doing it. Okay, teachers, ESL, this is not ESL class, so do not evaluate by one-on-one with you, but let them apply towards their classroom. So if you are doing that, I would like you to try to minimize this one and try practicing my advice. Maybe you will be amazed that they are more comfortable in learning the English. Okay, any questions? Okay, let's proceed. The cognitive theories attempt to codify both the nature of the mental representations of intake and language knowledge and the mental process of underlying these. I'm gonna skip this part. Next factor is the sociocultural factors. According to Dr. Rod Ellis, a world-renowned thought leader in the field of second language acquisition, from the early days of discipline, researchers have also acknowledged that social aspects play an important role. There have been many different approaches to social linguistic studies of the second language, and indeed, this plurality has meant that social linguistics as LeEBS is replete with a bewildering set of terms referring to the social aspect of your L2. Okay, this is how the people around our students or the community that we are teaching are behaving once they met a foreign language communication. Okay, common to each of these approaches, however, is the rejection of language as a purely psychological phenomenon. Instead, social linguistic research views the social context in which language is learned as essential for a proper understanding of the acquisition process. So there are three types of social structure that affects acquisition. The first one, we have social linguistic setting, we have specific social factors, and we have situational factors. So let's talk about them. First, we have the social linguistic setting. It refers to the role of the second language in society, such as whether it's spoken by a majority or a minority of the population. So in Thailand, is it majority or minority? Okay, English teachers in Thailand, most likely it's a minority. And for those who are now in your country, different countries we have here, like we have from the Philippines right now, is it a majority or a minority? Well, it's a majority. Okay, many people in the Philippines are speaking English. Okay, whether it's used in widespread or restricted to a few functional roles, or whether the society is predominantly bilingual or monolingual. What is the meaning of bilingual? It means you are capable of speaking two languages. Okay, you are fluent in of two languages. When we say monolingual, only one, of course, one language. And this also includes that distinction of whether the second language is learned in a natural or an educational setting. Number two, specific or social factors. But that can be affected SOA include the age, the gender, social class, and the ethnic identity. With ethnic identity being the one that has received most research attention. So in this part, they said that if we teach a second language to a young learner, there is a higher chance that they will be fluent than those who are just started as an adult. Do you think so? Do you agree with that? Okay. Why is that so? Okay. First factor, okay, I'm gonna talk about the age later actually. That's one of the factors. So first thing that you need to know, when you are an adult, you are so mindful about what you are learning. Okay, the technicalities. But when you are a young learner, you just actually try to learn whatever the teacher is teaching you. So you are like a blank sheet, you know, tabula rasa. You're a blank sheet. You're willing to accept any information without any hesitation or without uh, what, any defiance about what the teacher is teaching you. Okay? So that's about the specific social factor. Number three, we have the situational factors. Those are there. They vary between social interaction. For example, if the learner use more polite language when talking to someone, or higher social status, but more informal language when talking with your friends. Of course, like if you're talking to your boss, would you talk the same language as you were talking with your friends? Okay? You will become careful of the terms that you are using. Okay? The terminologies when you talk to your boss. Okay? And of course, the expressions as well. Okay? You cannot use the same expressions as with your friends and to someone that is superior from you, or even to those persons. Okay. So Our students, who are foreign language learners, okay, when they're talking to an English Thai teacher, they feel not so comfortable talking the English language, knowing that there are Thai people as well, right? So that's why when we have been given the opportunity, okay, to be the foreign language teacher, we will also give them, our students, the opportunity to speak to us in full English conversation, not just okay. So meaning, do not engage in Thai. Okay, show to them, even though you know how to speak Thai, as a language teacher, you need to be professional and motivated. And we need to be consistent. The third factor is what we call linguistic factor. Linguistic approaches to explaining second language acquisition spring from the wider study of linguistics. Okay? By the way, I'm not a linguist, okay, but I'm gonna share here what I have researched about what being a factor in the SLA. They differ from cognitive approaches and social cultural approaches in that they consider linguistic knowledge to be unique and distinct from any type of knowledge. Linguistic research tradition in SLA has developed a relative isolation from the cognitive and sociocultural research traditions as in 2010, the influence from the wider field of linguistics was still strong. There are two main strands. Okay. We have the generative approach. Okay. This comes from the universal grammar and the typological approach. So what are they? Here are the two main strands. Generative approach, okay, to SLE. This is a cognitive-based approach, okay, that applies theoretical insights developed from within generative linguistics. And this will investigate how SLA, okay, and dialects are acquired and lost by individuals learning naturalistically or with formal instruction in foreign second language and lingua franca setting. So it would only mean that in generative approach, okay, if you are consistently learning the language, okay, even though not in the formal setting, because it's part of uh, communication, then there will be a higher chance for you to learn the second language. Okay? You are just forced to learn the second language. This is a true scenario. For example, if you're a non-native English speaker and you try to live in an English-speaking country, even though you don't have a formal class, eventually you will develop the English language communication. The same for us here as foreign teachers. Maybe we don't have a formal training about the Thai language if you're in Thailand. Eventually, you are able to understand the Thai language and capable of speaking some words. Okay? Because we have been consistently mingling with the people, okay? And it's become part of our daily life. Okay? Well, the typological approach are principles that hold for all the world's language. They are found empirically by surveying different languages and deducing which aspects of them could be universal. These aspects are then checked against other languages to verify the finding. If you remember interlanguages, these have been shown to obey typological universals, and some researchers have suggested that typological universals may constrain interlanguage development. So, when to make it sure, what is typological universal? The language that is mostly spoken. Okay, the language that is mostly spoken in the world. Right. So, for example, uh, let's say, okay, let's make an example about Chinese language. Chinese is also one of the mostly spoken language, right? Well, however, when you come to Southeast Asian countries, are we when we are a foreigner? to different parts here of the saying. Are we talking in Chinese? What is the typological language approach? It's the English language. So the factor that drives us to learn more over Chinese language is when it is applied to a situation that English is actually more useful for business transaction. Okay? So that drives us to learn more the English language rather than the Chinese, even though it's also a world language. Okay? So my question is, so my question to you, should we stop learning Chinese language since this is class years? I'm not saying stop. If you have some transactions that's gonna be associated again using Chinese language, then you have to learn Chinese language. Okay, so it becomes now the factor will become interlanguage, which is the usage of different language for the fourth one, the fourth SLA factor is the individual variation. There is considerable variation in the rate at which people learn second language and in the language level that they ultimately reach. Some learners learn quickly and reach a near native level of competence, but others learn slowly and get stuck at relatively early stages of acquisition. Despite living in the country where the language is spoken for several years, the reason for this disparity was first addressed with the study of language learning aptitude in the 1950s and later with the good language learner studies in the 1960s. When we say language learning aptitude, it refers to prediction of how well, relative to other individuals, an individual can learn a foreign language in a given amount of time and under a given situation. With many measures of aptitude learning, aptitude is thought to be relatively stable once a person matures. But more recently, research has focused a number of different factors that affect individual language learning and strategy use like social, societal influences, the personality of our students, the motivation and their anxiety level. The relationship between age and ability to learn language has also been a subject for a long-standing debate. So there is no too accurate information about the individual variation, but on as we have what we have observed based on our experience with it, as language teacher, each student will have a different time. I would say even though we teach them a really good topic using a lot of activities, but not all of them will become master the language. Okay, but what we can appreciate if we can see their motivation, then it means that even though we're not their teachers anymore, there will be a higher chance that these students will become an intermediate, advanced, or even a fluent speaker of English because we can see some motivations of students. Okay, so that's one factor. Anyway, yes, the age. This is the one that we got. So the issue of age was first addressed with a critical period hypothesis. The strict version of this hypothesis states that there is a cutoff age about 12 and after which learners lose the ability to fully learn the language. Okay, teachers, when our students reach the 12 years old, that is now including college, their learning capacity. Okay, so it means that if we are teaching them at a younger age, they have a higher chance of becoming fluent speakers of English. Okay, if we're not teaching English or whatever language. Okay. However, the exact age marking at the end of the critical period ranges from 6 to 16 years old. This is like in the primary level, okay, going to
like first year high school, with arguing that this is around the onset of puberty. There's a strict version has since been rejected for second language acquisition, as some adult and adolescent learners have been observed to reach native-like levels of pronunciation and general fluency faster than young children. There were some observations as well. The maybe consistent exposure, practice, and the proficiency of the tutor or the teacher also may be helping those adults to reach fluency faster than the young children. Take note, teachers, regardless of these factors that about the SOA, it's also a huge factor for the instructor to be really competent of what he or she is doing. In general, adolescent and adult learners of second language are rarely achieve the native life fluency. The children who acquire both languages from birth to school, despite often progressing faster in the initial stages. So, the studies most likely those who studied English when they were young will achieve fluency. And for those adults, there will be a lesser chance for them to achieve fluency. They might be more about the advanced speakers. Okay. You must note this. Children who acquire two language from birth, they are called simultaneous bilinguals. Okay. Take note. When they acquire two languages from birth, they are called simultaneous bilinguals. While this one, when the language are spoken to the children by their parents or caregivers, okay, they grow up knowing the two languages. And children do not learn two languages from infancy, but learn one language from birth and another at some point during the childhood. They are now referred to as sequential. Okay. So most likely in our situation, our students are sequential bilinguals. Okay. Once they develop the L. The most likely simultaneous bilinguals are those who are ESL countries, okay? Those who have two official languages. Next factor, we have the strategy. Okay. Considerable attention has been paid to the strategies learners use to learn a second language. Strategies are commonly divided into learning strategies and communication strategies. In learning strategies, the techniques are used to improve learning, such as mnemonics or using a dictionary. And in the communicative strategies, are strategies a learner uses to convey meaning even when he or she doesn't have access to the correct word, using a proforms like thing or using a nonverbal such as gestures. Important note. Strategies have been found to be critical importance, so much that strategic competence has been suggested as a major component of communicative competence. When you are not familiar about how to teach the language properly, most likely you are more inclined about learning strategies. Okay? But once you fully understand how to teach an EFL students, you will use most likely communicative. Learning strategies is more ideal for kids, or it is for those who are really native to a particular language. And communicative strategies are those foreign languages. So now, let's try to understand what are the different communication strategies used by our students. Okay. First, we have the circumlocution. It refers to learners using different words or phrases to express their intended meanings. For example, if the learners do not know the word grandfather, if they are not familiar with the term grandfather, what they will say, my father's father, okay? Because they don't know the term grandfather. So they will say, my father's father. We call that communication strategies circumlocution. Okay. The next strategy by our learner is semantic avoidance. This is very common. Okay, here, learners avoid a problematic word by using a different one. Okay. For example, substituting a regular verb, okay, make with the regular verb, like us. Okay, The regularity of ask makes it easier to use correctly. So if our students are not familiar with the past tense form of that irregular verb, they will try to avoid using those irregular verbs, but they will just use more often regular verbs. That's why you will notice our students are always using the same verbs during the communication because they are thinking about and they're cautious about the irregularity of the words. Okay, we call that semantic concept. And lastly, we have here word coinage. This refers to learners creating a new words or phrases for words that they don't know. Okay, for example, a learner might refer an art gallery as you know the picture plays. Okay. Who among you here have experienced that your students is having a word coinage? Okay, because they are not really familiar with the right term in English. Okay, so that is part of a communication strategy. Actually, okay. Any question about the three before I move? None. Okay. The next communication strategies we have here: language switch. Learners may insert a word from their first language into a sentence and hope that the interlocutor will understand. Okay, so now I think most of you are so familiar about this one when you're talking to your students because they cannot speak thoroughly, so they will use their first language mixed with their second language. Okay, sometimes you, as the interlocutor, will have some difficulty of understanding. Okay, so that's what we call language switch. Next one, asking for clarification. So a strategy of asking an interlocutor for the correct word or other helps them in the communication strategy. When they don't know that term, most of the response is also a question. Okay? So asking to answer your question, I will ask you a question. Okay? So we call it asking for clarification. Have you experienced that with your students? Okay? That is another communication strategy. Next, nonverbal strategies. This refers to strategies such as the use of gesture and mind to augment or replace verbal communication. Now, people are not like foreigners. Okay, they will do some certain action just to be understood. Okay, so we call that nonverbal strategy. And lastly, we have avoidance. Avoidance, which takes multiple forms, has been identified as a communication strategy. Learners of a second language will learn to avoid talking about topics for which they lack the necessary vocabulary or other language skills in a second language. Also, language learners sometimes start to try to talk about the topic but abandon the effort in mid-utterance after discovering that they lack the language resource needed to complete their message. So if you have happened to experience this situation, this is very common that once we shift another topic during the mid of our conversation, everyone gets silent. It means that they cannot connect with you, and they're now trying to perform avoidance communication strategy. Okay. So upon identifying that our students became silent because they cannot connect, then as foreign language teacher, we try to analyze right away that is an avoidance technique or strategy. Therefore, we need to find another topic that will allow them to keep on talking with us. Okay. So those are the commonly used communication strategies in our. Next, the affective factors. So since we're catching out of time, I will just make it short. Anxiety. This is the thing that we need to overcome. The anxiety level of all our students once they learn a foreign language. Okay. For us to control this one, is to keep our students be motivated of learning the subject and creating different activities that will always excite them. Okay, so every time we come to the classroom, we need to find ways of uh, how we can make them so interested with us and how they can become activated inside the classroom because their affective factors or their emotions as well. If they're not emotionally prepared to learn the language, eventually they are not able to learn the language, no matter how good is your information. So that's why that's why we have warm up. You can now appreciate the essence of having a warm up. Motivation. This is the factor that we know. The individual learner is of vital importance to the success of language learning. So, without motivation, without proper motivation to our students, they will not be interested to interact with us or even be excited for our upcoming days teaching with them. So we need to make sure that we can create a highly motivated environment, right? And uh, we need to make sure as well that we always have an encouraging environment, meaning do not create a very competitive environment inside the classroom. Take note, the goal here is for them to help each other learn the language and not create walls. Okay? So now you might ask me, Louis, can we do individual activity and let them perform in front or group activity? What do you think? Ask yourself, which do you think will motivate them? Imagine if someone gets wrong, everyone will feel bad or mock. So there will be demotivation in that way. But if it's a group, no one's to be blamed because everyone is wrong if it's wrong, right? So that's one factor of how you determine your certain activity. Next, attrition rate. Attrition is the loss of proficiency in the language caused by a lack of exposure or to use of a language. So this is common if you were before you were young, you were used to speak, let's say Chinese. You were good at speaking Chinese language before, but you never practiced it, then there will be a higher chance that you will lose your proficiency speaking English. Same as our students. If how much like we have spent 7 years, 6 years teaching them the language. However, since you move back to your country and no one is helping them to practice the language already, they like have an attrition. And they will go back again to stage one of learning the language. So that's why we need to encourage them, okay, and the people around them to support them for a continued education and learning about the language. Okay? Not maybe through someone's keeping them study, but a self motivation to have their own application, watching movies, listening to English music, or reading English books. Okay, so that there will be no attrition. Okay. So now, since we have learned the principle of the language process, we have answered language acquisition and the processing. Now it's time to apply to our classroom. Okay. The SLA. Then about to end our discussion for tonight. Classroom second language acquisition is research has been devoted to language learning in a natural setting, and there have also been efforts made to investigate second language acquisition in the classroom. And this kind of research has significant overlap with language education, and is mainly concerned with the effect that instruction has on the learner. It also explores that what teachers do, the classroom context, the dynamics of classroom communication. It is both qualitative and quantitative research. The research has been wide ranging, but there have been attempts made to systematically measure the effectiveness of language teaching practices for every level of language, from phonetics to pragmatics, and for almost every current teaching methodology. This research has indicated that many traditional language teaching techniques are extremely inefficient. So going back to Ellis again, he stated that generally agreed that pedagogy restricted the teaching grammar rules and vocabulary do not give students the ability to use L2 with accuracy and fluency. Rather, to become proficient in second language, the learner must be given opportunities to communicative practices. Okay. I will not explain that part here. To conclude our training for tonight, I'll leave you a message. Teachers who love teaching teach children to love. Thank you all for tonight, and I hope that you were able to learn, okay, a good overview about the process of language learning. So I'm trying my best with my camera. Let me see if it's gonna work like this. It's like there's an so thank you all, and I hope that I had explained to you just enough information. And if you have some question, I'm now opening the floor for any clarifications. Is there anything you want to ask? Anyone?
Yes, I have one question.
Yes.
This is not about you keeping as a training. I really wonder because I have been trained in the TESOL way, TESOL approach, and many
Yeah.
English teacher has been trained in TESOL, but
Okay.
then Thailand is a EFL
Yes.
because they not use English as a second language. So
Yeah.
what is the really difference between TEFL and TESOL
Okay.
approach when you want to study in order to teach English to our Thai student? Which one you recommend
Perfect.
between TESOL and TEFL? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that wonderful question. Yes, I understand that in here we are provider of tackle and resource.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to highlight that when we talk about tackle, this is like a master class of how the teacher will deliver English teachings to a foreign language learner.
Mm-hmm.
But TESOL is a master class of how the teacher, what kind of necessary skills in teaching they must use when they're teaching language. Okay, so in TESOL, it's not barely specific to English, but English is also part of the TESOL. I'm not saying that there's not part, okay, but the TESOL is focusing more about the technicalities of teaching. This is more about the skill. So this is recommended actually for ESL countries because that skills development is for ESL students. Okay, when they handle ESL students. Okay, so as ESL students are learning from intermediate to fluency level of English. That's why they need to have a very good skill of teaching English. Okay, but for tackle, these are for beginner teachers and those who are not experienced in teaching. That's why this is intended for ESL because it's for beginner to intermediate language learners. Okay, so just to conclude, I would suggest that uh, if they're living in an EFL country, TEFL would be ideal so that they will master how to teach or understand ESL students. But if they plan to teach in a country like a native English speaking country or ESL countries, TESOL would be ideal.
Hmm.
Mhm. But
Thank you.
in Thailand, if they will be working in international school, TESOL
Mm.
will be recommended. Okay, my pleasure.
It
Anything
sound
else?
like it sound like you talking like TESOL is about teaching methodology. Is that correct?
Yes,
Emphasizing emphasizing in teaching methodology.
yes, it is more like that. If you have happen to see a course outline of a TESOL program, you will notice this is practicing more about the technical aspects of teachings, while the TEFL is more about the practicality. Okay,
Mhm.
they target oriented and more about the helping them to start up with the career of teaching. Anything else? Okay. Yes, Renee?
Yes, sir. I would like to ask about the difference between language and dialect in like because it's confusing sometimes the meaning.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
All right. So when we talk about language, these sets of words are the official, okay, those official spoken words in the country. So many people, or majority of the people, are using widely these words. Okay? While a dialect is specific to a city or a certain town. Okay, so and if we compare it between the, let's say, the terms, the meaning, okay, dialect might be similar to the language. However, in the aspects of communication application, there might be a slight difference. Okay, so I'm talking about, for example, let's say I would cite in Philippines. Let's say the official language of Filipinos are English and the Filipino itself. But there are many dialects, okay? Like, for example, the Bisaya, okay? The Bisaya is a language, okay? But the dialect there, we have Cebuano, we have people from Batangas, okay? Why they are dialect and why they are not language? Because the Bisaya is already the language that the official one declared. But this is spoken from different cities. Cebuano Bisaya is different. Cagayan Bisaya is different. Whatever, other places like that is different. So that becomes a dialect because that's only specific for city. So, but if you tell me that people from Baguio, even if they speak Tagalog, and then they will say, "Is that dialect?" No, it's not a dialect. Okay, because what they speak is also it's really a language already. Okay, it's not a dialect. Right. So just take note. Minority people speak dialect. Majority speaks language. Anything else? I hope I answered the question.
Thank you.
Well, anything else? Okay. All right. So if none, I will turn over the floor to my colleague, Jason, for some announcements and, of course, for the certificate as well. So Jason, please.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Jason Kent. I'm a social media coordinator for LeEBS. I will try to do my best to make it quickly because I know everyone is hungry and it's late night. So I'll try my best to tell our programs for in our company. The two main programs we offer: 120-hour TEFL program and TEYL program. What you learned today is a part of our 120-hour TEFL program. TEFL meaning teaching English as a foreign language. and TEYL meaning teaching English to young learners. Regarding about TEFL, if there is any teachers who haven't still received a certificate for TEFL, then we recommend to take enroll in our TEFL program. We have an upcoming TEFL program on March 16, 3 weeks, from Tuesday to Thursday. The time is 6:30 p.m. until 8 p.m. Regarding TEYL, if there is teachers who are elementary school teachers, then I would recommend to take TEYL program. TEYL program will be this upcoming March 21st. It will be doing on weekends. From time is from 9:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. If you have any inquiries about our training program, please send us an inbox message on our main Facebook. And for everyone who joined today's webinar, I have a special promotion, which is 40% discount if you join today for either of our programs, either TEFL program or TYL. If you join both, that will be very nice. Oh, if you want the certificate, your certificate, and a copy slides of our today webinar, then please give a recommendation comment on our Facebook. So to do this, first go to Facebook, type in Layer Education Business Solutions, and go to review. Okay, you can give up to you a 5-star or 4-star, 3-star, up to you, and give us a review on our Facebook. Then we will send you a certificate to you. If you want the video recording, I know many people join late because maybe they didn't know the time, or maybe they internet is some problems. No worries. If you want the video recording of today, then please subscribe on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is the same, Layer Education Business Solutions. A certificate for our joining webinar. So you can choose either one of them, either e-certificate or hard copy certificate. For e-certificate, it will be free. You will just send it through your email. But if you want a hard copy certificate, I will send a link right now. Okay, in the meeting details group, I have sent the link. In the link, there will be details of how much the delivery fee for the hard copy. And this is a sample of our participation of today's webinar. And thank you. I hope everyone enjoy and had a lot of valuable lessons for today's webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. All right, so I hope that this is a meaningful time, and I would like to thank you all for rendering your time with us. I know it's weekend, and you have chosen to step up with your career, and that makes us so happy here in the Education Business Solutions, because there's only a few teachers who are motivated to pursue this career and get advanced with their expertise. Okay, and joining us this seminar and sharing your thoughts and some information, answering questions is really valuable for us. So I hope that I have imparted something. Okay, I'm not saying maybe everything, but I hope that it's gonna help you with your teaching career. I look forward to meeting you as well in our future events and seminars. This is not gonna be the first and the last seminar. We will have more webinars in the upcoming, and then I will be inviting different speakers from different fields of expertise. Because in here in the Education Business Solutions, we value continued professional development. So thank you all, and see you soon. I think I will go to Jason so that you can see me somehow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice
Great.
evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
So much.
Have fun with my computer camera.
Bye.
Bye. Good night to
Bye
all.
bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye bye and
See
have a
you.
good night, everyone. Bye bye.
Message us on Facebook for more questions or you want to avail those privileges.
Yes,
Bye.
sir. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. See
Please
you.
enjoy your weekend. Bye
You too.
bye.
Bye bye. Have a nice weekend.